Anyway, let's go to hell.
I don't know really anything about uh, the Foo Fighters. David, what do you know about the Foo Fighters?
I've seen them live. They're great. They're fun. Um, they're energetic, exciting. I know Dave Grohl. I don't know. I'm not that much of a Foo fan where I know like all the members. So I'm like, I know Dave Grohl, and I know where he comes from. Of course. Um, yeah, and I know that they would make like some fun music videos, and it seems like even on their some of the documentary movies that they've made of either an album or a tour, you could tell that Grohl is into like pop culture and movies, and obviously like as of this movie, he's into horror movies, but he also directed, a great music documentary called Studio City.
Hmm.
Sound City, sorry, Sound City. And it's awesome. But so it wasn't a huge surprise to see this coming.
So, Studio 666 is the movie we're talking about today.
Yes.
Starring the Foo Fighters. It's very much kind of like a Scooby-Doo vibe, minus the Scooby Gang. It's just like a
Right.
cartoon with the celebrity guest staying in a possessed, hell house, trying to
Yeah.
record their 10th album. Yeah, I know some of the Foo Fighters songs. I know Dave Grohl. I think I've seen some of the band members around, probably in the videos. But when you say energetic, I assume that means in the context of a concert, live
Yeah, I mean,
music and videos.
their music, yeah,
Okay.
and live music, yeah.
Because I had a really hard time watching a lot of this movie because I found it had the same problem as when athletes do commercials. And you're like, that's not acting. I don't know what that is. It's sort of like a bemused, I can't believe there's a camera on me, or I can't believe I'm on a movie set. Dave Grohl is the exception. He's the showman, the performer.
Yeah.
But a lot of the other band members in here who I probably can't name. That's why I've got IMDb open.
That's right.
Yeah, there's an utter lack of presence and charisma that just makes it all weird. I almost wish this had been a movie about the Foo Fighters in which other people were playing the Foo Fighters, like if actors were playing the Foo Fighters.
That would be funny. And then like halfway through, the Foo Fighters, like the actual Foo Fighters show up, like, hey, come on, this isn't right. I almost wish like this isn't a good movie. It's not. And it's so
Let's get that out of the way. Yes.
Yeah. So I almost wish that it would have been like weirder, or like as kind of like, Wayne's World as it could have been, and we get some like there's two like really like unexpected bizarre cameos that I wish there would have been like more of that, like, oh, this we're in Encino, we're in freaking LA. There could have been a lot more of those weird cameos, even if it was like dreamscape type stuff, like one of these demons gave him some edibles that tripped him out, and then he sees all these rock and roll Hall of Famers or something. I don't know. But here's the thing. I talked to a couple people about this movie already, and it was just the screening I went to today, we talked a little bit about this, and
I gotta ask you about that. I gotta ask you about that screening afterwards. I'm very curious.
So I said, you know what? It was fun. It was fun seeing these guys have fun, but it wasn't really fun to watch it. And so that kind of sums it up. It's like, this isn't really scary. It's gory. It's not scary. It's not really that funny, but it's supposed to be a horror comedy. The Foo Fighters are in a bind. They need to make some kind of epic greatness for their 10th album. And, they wind up agreeing to rent out a Encino mansion that supposedly has a history of a lot of parties and some murders. And we see that murder in the opening act, opening scene, set to music composed and performed by John Carpenter. Um,
Who makes a
and
cameo?
I know
John and
that
Cody Carpenter did the score for this.
that was one of the cameos I was referring to. And we see Jenny Ortega getting bludgeoned as not as as intense as she did in Scream last month, but
I didn't recognize her. That was wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't get a whole lot of screen time in here. She's just kind of like generic, black-haired rocker chick.
Pretty much. And so, you could say hilarity and scaredy ensues. And neither here nor there. And it, Grohl, they're playing themselves, and Grohl is really trying to rally the band together and say, hey, come on, we can make this, but he's not really being honest, because he himself is having this like creative funk. And he thinks like the acoustics and everything in this place are really going to help. And, little does he know, there's this mysterious aura of evil. And basically it's a potential gateway to some other kind of, demon portal entryway with these Uncle Boonme demons. And
thank you. I wrote that down. Those are totally Uncle Boonme demons. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, everybody, check out the episode of the Slowdown I did with Sujiwa, and also watch Uncle Boonme, Who Can See His Past Lives.
Yeah. And not too bad considering it's a horror comedy, meaning not too bad as far as special effects and gore and all that, because it's not too bad, it's not too great either. So it's like, considering what it is and what it's going for, the special effects of the demons and stuff and portals and all this stuff, it could have been a lot worse than what it actually is. But we don't really, this isn't a movie where you actually like get to know who these people are. Okay, we're experiencing something with them. It's more like we're kind of in on the joke, and we don't really want to be. I don't know.
And it's also that the people who aren't like Dave, who aren't Dave Grohl, a lot of them kind of look like Dave Grohl. They have that kind of like generic California aging rocker surfer guy vibe. Yet they also talk in this weird, almost Andy Dick accent where they're like, "You dick."
Yeah, it is weird. It doesn't really feel like, it's almost like they're doing a variation of themselves. I don't know why. Just be yourselves. It is weird to see. As I was watching this, I'm like, well, okay, these guys they're all in their 50s, late 50s, because I just turned 50 and they got to be older than me. And I don't know, at times, some of them are just acting like kind of like man-child, type, like, dude, and it's like, really, is this how these people are really acting, or in real life? Is this how they are?
Well, I think part of the problem is this movie is about 20 years too late because it's kind of like when we talked about Marry Me last week. It's this generic romantic comedy that's supposed to be about like a contemporary pop artist who's 52 years old. It'd be interesting if Dave Grohl, because the whole thing is like, we got to come up with a unique sound for our 10th album so that no one will buy it. I mean, like, the Foo Fighters are great and they're important and everything, but they're not setting the world on fire anymore. I don't know if the 10th album would do that. If it were something like, again, like I said about Marry Me, Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, like, we were the kings of the world 25 years ago. And now in an age where everyone with a cell phone is a rock star, what do we have to do? Sell our soul to get on top, that kind of a deal, and have some real stakes, them trying to accomplish something, believable, because maybe, because at the very end, spoiler alert, all of the Foo Fighters die except for Dave Grohl, which
thanks to possess Dave Grohl.
Yes, he kills all of them, and then he kind of finally gets, I guess, what he wanted, which is a solo career, which is kind of morbid. I mean, that could have been an interesting side story of like of him like getting a solo career by killing off the members of his band. That would you take the demonic possession angle out of it. If it just been a weird thing where he goes crazy and starts picking off his band slasher style, but because he's kind of like too nice and too friends with them to actually break up with the whole band.
Yeah. or if it's like not necessarily like overtly demonic, it's more like a sacred guitar that possesses him or something, that when he plays it, he plays amazing, and it's infectious to all the musicians around him, and kind of like having some kind of Devil and Daniel Webster approach to it. It's like you're basically selling your soul to the devil to perform, to play amazing and get back on stage, not just because they need a great hit 10th album, but also to just kind of like prove the relevance at their age to themselves, and just like, guys, I need to get this, we need to get back on it, I need to feel that mojo again. How are we going to do that? Maybe this location will help us, but I found this amazing guitar from an auction, and it belonged to whoever, John Carpenter, but it's like just something. And I don't know. I appreciated at points like certain like bizarreness, like there's a point where it feels like a tripped out scene where it's just Dave Grohl playing piano and he's playing Lionel Richie's Hello, and then like Lionel Richie shows up, and we don't know if like he's imagining that. I mean, he could be, but it's funny because he's just like, dude, you're playing my song, it's like, it's not cool,
Well, and I love this the kind of the capper on that scene, because Lionel Richie says, "Get your own damn song, nerd."
right. And it's like I don't know if that really, if he landed that line really really well, but it was sure fun to see that, and that's kind of like how this movie is. It's like, I don't know if this really lands what it's trying to do, but it is kind of fun to see these guys in this kind of Scooby-Doo mode. There's some characters that are actual actors that really bog the movie down. Like I don't know what Jeff Garland's doing here, but from the start, he's awful. Like, he's terrible.
Well, it's you mentioned Wayne's World, and I think because I just watched that recently in the last couple of weeks, and it just shows how you can do something perfectly right, and then you can not understand quite how to handle the material, and it goes horribly wrong. Jeff Garland, he plays, what is the name? Consolidated Consumer Records is the name of the label, and he's their talent manager. His name is Shill. But that's the thing, is like, right. But he and Dave Grohl are having this argument in a boardroom about this 10th album. And it just evolves into this swearing match that would have been, I guess, edgy again 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's vulgar language, and I can't believe I just used the phrase vulgar language. I feel like I'm over 50.
You prude.
Seriously, but it's not a substitute unless you're Quentin Tarantino and you can turn it into poetry through dialogue. It's not a substitute for wit. And it's just like, I'm looking at my watch. This movie is an hour and 47 minutes long, and we're wasting 5 of it on this swearing match.
It would have been funny if some of the other foos were like kind of doing tennis match between the two like this, and one of them's like, "Hey guys, language," just like
something,
something just kind of like to add something to it, But yeah, like Garland is just, he's like, I expected him to have a heart attack in that first scene, because he's just like. It's just like, a roided Seth Rogen going nuts, it's like, what is happening here? And of course, where he winds, when we see him again at the end of the movie, it's like, oh, of course, members of a cult or whatever it is. It's like, I didn't totally follow the whole demon thing in the basement and all this stuff. And
there was I guess a band from the beginning of the movie, and the leader of that band was he conjured something, but it drove him crazy, and he killed the entire band, and they never were able to realize their big masterpiece. So the mansion itself absorbs this sound and these spirits, and so when the Foo Fighters move in, the acoustics are out of this world, and they discover the mysterious L chord or something like that. I don't know. But there's like raccoon entrails in the basement, and it doesn't make any sense. And I think in a smarter movie, the fact that it doesn't make sense would have felt deliberate rather than just people throwing stuff at the screen. You know what it reminded me of? I think one of my favorite horror comedies the last 20 years is Club Dread by Broken Lizard. Did you ever see that?
No.
If you can find it, it's about basically these people who go to a vacation resort, and Broken Lizard, they're the people who did like Super Troopers.
Okay.
Yeah, this was, I think, much funnier than anything they did in the Super Troopers movie. But it's basically people go to a resort and there's a psycho killer on the loose, but it is a genuine horror comedy with like laugh out loud horror and great or laugh out loud comedy and great horror gags, often kind of mixed together. In this one, I think it opens with a really effective horror scene because it's almost like a straight slash. There's no gags. It's just Jenny Ortega getting taken out. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is a really great footing. But then we cut to that terrible
boardroom meeting.
Yeah, record boardroom scene. And it's like, oh, okay, so I guess we're doing this too. And it's just all over the place. There's a really effective and I think fun chainsaw death.
With Whitney Cummings.
With Whitney Cummings. Again, like I like Whitney Cummings, but it's like when she and Will Forte show up, I just feel like all of these actors, this movie felt like it was taken off the shelf from about 10 years ago.
Well, they got like a phone call. Hey, this is Dave Grohl. Got this idea for a movie. Would you like to have a part? Sure. It's a pandemic. I'll shoot it. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, Whitney Cummings she plays like the wacky neighbor with a secret.
Maybe somewhat horny and weird. I don't know.
But
making lemon bars for the band.
Lemon bars, that's one of the things I actually laughed out loud at was lemon bars, except instead of powdered sugar on the top, it's cocaine. For the band. But she doesn't, she's not Whitney Cummings in this movie. She's not like, that's not her brand of humor. It's just anybody could have played this neighbor part.
Yeah, it's true. It's maybe in the early 90s, I don't know, Drew Barrymore or something, I don't know. I just feel like it's weird to say that like this movie would have been, I don't know, weirder or ballsier, 30 years ago or something, it's hard to admit that the 90s were 30 years ago, but it's just it is weird that that was an interesting death scene where
well, because we've seen it's almost like a riff
even recently.
Well, but like it's almost a riff on the Friday the 13th scene where Kevin's almost said Kevin Smith and or Kevin Spacey.
Spacey. Kevin Spacey.
Yikes. Kevin Bacon gets the spear through the neck, but because the killer is hiding under the bed. But in this case, it's Dave Grohl
with
hanging
a chainsaw
out
under the bed.
Yes.
How does that work?
I don't
imagine trying to get a chainsaw up from under.
That's because there was conveniently a hole in the floor that he had it resting vertically. Right. But no, so it comes up through Whitney Cummings' face, which was kind of fun. And then they do a ceiling shot down, and I swear it looked like miniatures of like little clay bodies kind of like pulled apart with blood spraying everywhere.
It is funny. Yeah, it is funny because when the camera does pan out in some of these kills, you could tell it's just like, okay, well, that is just so fake, when it's happening, it's not too bad. But then like when we see the aftermath, like when we see Will Forte's body like the next day kind of like on the ground, you just see this, like, it just looks like a decapitated mannequin, like almost like sitting there scarecrow style. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing is it's while I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, is this cheap or is it intentionally cheap? Like that's part of the joke. Yeah. And when I'm sitting there forced to ask that question, the horror comedy has lost its effectiveness.
I think it's intentionally cheap because it's cheap. So because it's cheap, they just went the intentional route too. So it's funny because when you said we were going to talk about this, you're like, oh, we have a lot to talk about. I'm like, did he like this movie? What are we gonna talk about?
No,
So
well,
yeah,
I wasn't sure where you were coming from, so I figured if you hated it or if you loved it and I
yeah,
didn't, because
yeah.
that's the thing is I didn't hate it. It was
I didn't either.
fascinating. I'm kind of glad I watched it, but like I was thinking about all the ways that it went wrong and all the ways I think it could have gone right. I mean, there are some funny lines and moments.
Mhm,
For example, when I think it was the realtor was talking,
mhm,
played by Leslie Grossman,
mhm.
who I generally think is pretty great. You know, she's a fine comic actress, but she plays the realtor who sells the house to the Foo Fighters. And I
Yeah.
think it's the scene where they're talking about the murders that happened in the house, or the deaths that happened.
Mhm.
Um, let's see.
He wrote it down.
I did. I did. Okay. They were talking about the band never the band that died in the beginning.
Right,
She said
right.
they never finished their album. Creative differences.
Creative differences. Yeah, yeah. So and it just seemed like the rest of the band was kind of like hesitant, and like when some of the band members start to disappear at each turn, since Dave Grohl's possessed, he manages to persuade them, no, guys, we got to keep on recording. Like the first, like the tech guy gets like burnt to a crisp. That's
Mhm.
like a huge, like sudden death for this band in this, strange new place. Wouldn't they just be like, all right, let's scrap this, let's get out of here? And then like he gives this speech like, guys, we gotta we gotta just see this through. We gotta do this, dedicate the album to him and see that. I'm like, I'm not buying that. It's like I would have been like, dude, I'm going back to my wife, dude. See you. I mean, again, these are guys in their middle ages, and it's just like it's not like they're struggling for like a sophomore effort. They had their debut record was a hit, and they're really trying to scramble for their next, like their second album. It's their 10th album, dude. I mean, they can. It's like what?
Here's the out that we were talking about at the beginning. The Foo Fighters all quit except for Dave Grohl once the
Mm,
the tech roadie dies. And Dave Grohl is so determined to make a 10th Foo Fighters album, he goes out and finds actors who look exactly like the original
that would
Foo
have been
Fighters, say,
awesome.
now you're our new band.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. And the like you mentioned the way it ends up with him in a solo career. At no point in the movie is he expressing any interest in a solo career. He wants to do a 10th album with the band, Foo
Yeah.
Fighters. So it's like it's really odd. And at the end, he has this whole like he's in the green room and he's about to go on stage at a concert of just Dave Grohl live or whatever. And he has this then and there he has this demon voice. Okay, or it's like what?
I
All
think
right.
don't his eyes go
Yeah,
black or
what
something?
not yeah, there's like a veiny black thing there, and it's like, okay, it's like what are we supposed to believe there's gonna be a Studio 6662 or something? It's like
I just found out this evening they're doing Evil Bong 888, so anything is possible.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
Um,
yeah.
that's that's the frustrating thing is like when I saw that this was going to be a movie, I was like, oh, this will be a cute little video on demand thing. But then we went to the movies together a few weeks ago, and I think it's the same screen we saw Marry Me trailer, and then we
Yeah.
also saw the Studio 666 trailer. I'm like, this is
Just
coming out in theaters?
in
How does that
theaters.
work?
Yeah, in theaters. And it's like, to me, if I didn't get a screener copy, I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I would totally wait for, streaming on some platform. But the Foo Fighters fans, the Foos, whatever they're called, I mean, they're many, I mean, when the band came to Wrigley Field, I mean, that every night was packed, and they're great. They're a great, live band and everything, and they're fun to see. And I highly recommend the documentary Dave directed, Sound City.
What's that about?
It's really about this like kind of famed um, sound studio where a lot of amazing albums were made in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
Yeah, Sound City. Um, Good stuff. And it's Dave directed it, but he's also like kind of like going back and forth and interviewing some of the artists and bands that recorded there. So it's cool. Yeah, it was gosh, I don't know. I want to say like maybe 7 years ago or something like that. 8. Um, but yeah, it's worth checking out. Yeah, it's Studio 666 is like, really strange. It's like, um, again, I kind of feel like the way I did about Uncharted. It was somewhere between okay and fine. It's like, mm, you know,
Well, even the title, it 666, okay, it's the devil's number, but
uh,
Studio 666, it just sounds like a weird bad combination of Studio 54 and Route 66. And I'm like, but
yeah,
neither of those have anything to do with this rock and roll devil mansion movie.
yeah. I mean, there's no studio. I mean, they could have called it Mansion from Hell. That would have been interesting or something, but it's literally kind of like an attention grabbing title. It's supposed to be like, curious. It's short and quick, and it's almost like I don't know, an album title, but I did a little bit of research on the concept and the making of this movie. Is like it makes sense that this movie was made while they were recording their 10th album. So it was like, I think October 2019, and then by February 2020, the album was done, and they were looking forward to promoting it and possibly going on tour. And then, yeah, we all know what happened, March 2020. So a lot of that marketing and like they started just staggering like singles throughout 2020 from the album. I think it's called, was it Midnight Madness or something like that? But I guess this is the actual location where they recorded that album. Okay, so I'm sure while they were recording it, they're like, "Hey, man, what if we did like, Dave Grohl's like, what if we did like a horror comedy here, and you know, we could play ourselves, and we could just have a crew come in, and hey, I'm close to John Carpenter and his son, and I'll make a few phone calls, and we could just hang since we're staying here anyway. We could just, when we're not recording, we could just be ourselves, and we could have Frito-Lay fund it because they'll have Doritos all over the place.
The Doritos. Oh my God.
At one point, I thought that they were going to open a room and it was one of the Foos going to be like laying on a bed full of Doritos or something.
At least, play with that. Like right. make that part of the deal. Guys. Like if you want, I'll possess you and make this a hit, but we also need to get that sponsorship. So you eat nothing but Doritos.
Right.
You're not going to get horribly sick.
Yeah, guys, I made a 7-layer. Whitney Cummings comes over with a 7-layer dip, with Dorito bits, something, it's like, I heard you guys like Cool Ranch,
No, she comes out like Allie Larder in Varsity Blues, but with Dorito chips strategically placed on her naked body. Wow. But there's so much potential here, but hearing you explain the history of that, the whole thing makes sense because this screams pandemic movie. Like, we're isolated, we've got a small crew, we're gonna go nuts if we don't do something creative. Let's make a fun movie. And then someone is like, I can put this in theaters.
What? And it's crazy because we're in a time where, like, Steven Soderbergh just came out with Kimmy, a pandemic kind of Hitchcockian movie with Zoe Kravitz. Really good. I liked it a lot. And I'm like, it's crazy that this is not in theaters, but then like Studio 666 is. It's like, what? It's almost like they made a deal with, okay.
I want to see that movie. Like their agent had a Mephistophelian bargain somewhere. That's the other weird thing is I don't know how this movie's going to do. I guess it's what else is opening this weekend.
I mean, there's the Norwegian disaster flick The Burning Sea, which is actually pretty good. Not much.
So this could be number one, apparently.
Wow.
It's just one of those odd deals. Like I know where things are opening back up, and like Spider-Man made $1 billion or whatever, but it's still, this seems kind of like a reckless decision to put this in a movie theater because it's got to be way more expensive than just like quote unquote dumping it on streaming. It's a big investment. I don't know, are there that many Foo Fighters enthusiasts or fans of mediocre horror comedy to go out and make this, to make its money back even?
Probably as many fans as there are, fans of the Uncharted video game series who are going to go make it #1 opening weekend. And so, look, maybe that's a stretch. Maybe not as many. But when you think about it, it's like, okay, this movie might do good opening weekend because of Foo Fighter fans. But after that, what?
Well, even Foo Fighter fans, like you said, they're in their, no offense, they're possibly in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah,
I mean, I like their music. I'm just not a fan. Like when their song comes on, like when Dave Grohl was, I had those Captain America moments when he was doing that. Like, guys, I wrote this new riff, and he's like, "Oh, that's Everlong. Oh, that's that's Hero." Right? I was like, I get that reference, but I don't know their deep cuts. But the thing is, like, the people, they're older people. They probably have families and lives and other things. If there's a new Foo Fighters movie, they're probably like, oh, cool, the Foo Fighters made a movie. I'll watch that next month when it's on demand.
Or they'll be like,
theater, what?
Or they'll be like, but they're a band,
That's right.
And,
they're not actors.
And here's another thing, and this is what one of our fellow critics mentioned to me this morning or this afternoon, is like, the odd thing is there's really no good music in this movie. It's like you were expecting like Foo Fighters to actually like, okay, look, what if they did make a deal with the devil? They should be making some awesome music and shredding stuff, but they never really come up with anything that great.
Well, I don't know if the end song is new. I'd never heard it before. It's called Love Dies Young.
Yeah.
I can't hum it for you because I've already forgotten it. But 2 days ago, when I was watching this thing at 4 a.m, I was like, Love Dies Young, or however the hell it goes. I thought it was kind of catchy.
It's a great way to start your workday.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. It's a bizarre, you talk about how well it's going to do in the movies. It's like, especially right now, it's like, okay, the movie that did really well, the last movie that did really well was Spider-Man, of course. So that's December. And we're living in a time where, like, between Spider-Man in December and Batman in March, what's happening in between then? And that's the state of things. It's like, the only movie that's really going to be doing amazing numbers. And look, it's not like we're on a podcast to talk about like box office or whatever. It's like we talk about movies because we like movies and we want to discuss them. But it's hard not to look at the climate and look at what's what is rising to the top, what is making money, and what is getting lost in the shuffle, and where the movies are, meaning where can we find them? And so, if a movie isn't an IP with a big budget, I'm not just gonna say superhero movies, but okay, then those are kind of guaranteed hits, I guess. But
well, it's an interesting point because you could say that the IP in this case is the Foo Fighters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably part of the decision. Like they've got name recognition, they're a huge band, or they were. And I guess when you said they came out with an album in 2020, I'm like, really? Or they were dropping they were dropping. Right. But it's like, I haven't thought about the Foo Fighters. I think about them whenever I happen to be listening to the radio in my car, the few times that I drive anymore. And it's like, oh, there goes my hero.
Yeah.
But no, but the point about box office and, our good friends, Mr. Scorsese and Coppola have waded into these waters, and they've got a lot of backlash, but there is something to it. The movies that people only seem to care about making anymore and getting out in the big screen are these IP blockbuster comic book movies, video game adaptations. So if you want to push back against that, you have a movie, Studio 666. I would love to be able to come here and report, hey, gang, go out to the movie theater and support this amazing, like groundbreaking new horror comedy featuring a band that you're going to rediscover and reappreciate in a whole new way. But instead, I'm like, you can wait for on demand. And even when it comes on demand, if you get lost in the 5,000 Netflix tiles scrolling by you, you're not going to miss anything.
Yeah. I mean, like last week at the same time Uncharted came out, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie came out on Netflix, and it's like it seemed like that's all that, whatever, if you want to call it film Twitter or the internet, or was talking about, like, the state of film criticism and whether they liked, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or not. It's like we hadn't had this much coverage on a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie with the last sequels or attempts to reboot the franchise. So it's like, what's happening here? This isn't even worthy of being discussed here.
Well, just wait till you read my review, sir.
Oh,
great.
Great.
It's several days overdue because that's been a crazy week. But
yeah, I understand.
But no, it's interesting. I was talking to Mark about this on his Spoiler Room Patreon show this week about Texas Chainsaw. It's interesting to think about the fact that we probably would not have had that big film Twitter discussion that lasted, several days if it had come out in the theaters. But because it's on Netflix and pretty much everyone has Netflix,
access to everything.
Yeah, it's under 90 minutes long. It's on Netflix. You don't have to go anywhere. And so like people can just have their opinions. You don't even have to wait. Like, people, it opened Friday, so people are going to start talking about it on Sunday or Monday whenever they get to the theater. No, it's like Friday when you wake up. Like, it's already big. It's already blown up. But it's pardon the pun, it's buzzworthy. It's something to talk about. Whereas with Studio 666, it's just like, I think we're devoting the appropriate amount of time and attention to it, and we're spending half of it talking about other movies' box office.
I know. We're basically spinning. We're dieseling, as I like to say. And again, if somebody sees, oh, there's a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, okay. But then if somebody sees like Dave Grohl's in a horror movie, and okay, and I will give the credit this, it's like at least the movie poster doesn't like feel all photoshoppy, unlike most superhero movies. It actually, I think it looks like it's actually done by an artist and everything, and okay, great. But
well, it's funny because, well, not funny, but BJ McDonnell, the guy who directed it,
we haven't even mentioned him.
Well, it's funny. He's done a lot of like music video work, but I was scrolling back through his filmography. He directed Hatchet 3, a movie I absolutely despise. But because it's, you've got Adam Green's Hatchet, which he did Hatchets 1 and 2, and those are like horror comedies. The comedy is kind of weak, but the horror is like nonpareil, like some great splatter effects. And by the time you get to the third one, the killer looks cheap. The murders look kind of hokey. The jokes are like wretched.
And Adam Green's gone.
Right. And I'm like, well, it's just all starting to make sense now when I'm watching Studio 666.
Yeah. And it's like, I'd really be curious to see if like Grohl had like, tapped him for this or what, or they were friends. I don't know. Well, you said that if he made music videos, then maybe that's the connection. Who knows?
If only that had been as innovative as some of the Foo Fighters music videos.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, it makes me want to go listen to the actual album that was made at this actual mansion place.
As long as that Love Dies Young song is on there, I'll listen to it.
There you go.
All right. Well, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, that's REEL. This conversation has gone ever long. So we're gonna let it go. And wait, that was another song reference I didn't mean to make. At least I'm not singing that damn Bruno song from Encanto. That has infected my house.
I still have not seen that movie. I gotta, yeah.
Watch the Honest Trailers version of it, and you'll get the insight and the point. And some laughs. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, sir. We'll be back talking about hang on, because we're going to talk about the movie you watched this afternoon briefly, not on this show. Everyone else will have to wait a little bit.
Sounds good.
But thanks, man, for going on this journey with me, for rocking out with me. And we'll catch you later.
All right. Thanks. See ya.
Bye. Bye.